Well, maybe the Song of Solomon should have been a tip-off to us, but as we continue to look at Solomon's life in the consecutive or the chronological Bible, we see the beginning of 1 Kings 11, verses 1 through 13. Solomon loved many foreign women. One of the problems with reading through a Bible in a year is that you don't have a time to slow down and stop and meditate and use the method of OIA to every section that you read. OIA stands for observation, interpretation, and application. And here, when we look at this, that Solomon loved many foreign wives or women, we come to the fact that it then records for us that he had 700 marriages, which were for political gain. That is, he married women outside of the Jewish faith, but he did that to try to form alliances and protection for his kingdom and peace in his kingdom. He had 300 concubines on top of that. That's 1,000 women. And it tells us very clearly in verse 3 that they turned his heart to worship false gods. Now, one of the things that we have heard in the New Testament and in the Old Testament alike is that a little leaven spoils the whole lump. And here it's a lot of leaven, and it definitely spoiled the lump. Solomon had been following all of the commandments of God, following his father's example and his direction for building a temple and for bringing the ark to the temple and improving the lives of his people, and there was peace and prosperity, and it was wonderful. And he may have justified and rationalized by the 700 wives the fact that he was increasing that peace and assuring that there would be no interference from some of the surrounding countries because he was married to their daughters. But nevertheless, it tells us quickly that where Solomon could have influenced his 300 concubines and 700 wives, that in fact they influenced him. And as a result of that, he, because he loved them, and because we see that he has a natural man nature, which is to like women, and perhaps lustful in the fact that we read the Song of Solomon and know that he enjoyed intimacy, we find that he was desirous of pleasing them, and in pleasing them, he built them places of worship that were to false gods. And as he did that, he not only influenced his own life and his own walk with the Lord, but he was certainly a bad example to the people who he was in charge of and who he was the king over. There's no question about it. We can see that when he married all of these women, instead of influencing them, they influenced him, and the result was bad. The result was that his kingdom became weaker and weaker the further he went in. Now, I want to stop here for a moment and do the application. The interpretation was quite easy because it's pretty well spelled out for us here in 1 Kings, and it's a sad scenario because it was a bad witness to the people, verses 7 and 8. The Lord was very angry, verse 9. And we see that his whole kingdom is turning, but it's not turning rapidly. Remember, his kingdom was 40 years. He built the temple in 7, his own house in, I believe, 13 or 14. And he did a lot of wonderful things in rebuilding cities and treating his people well and allowing them to enjoy the prosperity of the land as well as himself. But sin is an interesting thing. It starts out with minor concessions towards things you know that aren't wrong until they get rooted into your life to a place where they take over. They have control of you instead of you having control of them. How often does that happen in a life? Well, unfortunately, quite frequently. Look at how many pastors have been brought down by a little weakness that he allowed to stay in his life. I really like the movies that were put out by the church down in Georgia, and Fireproof and the like. They talk about how those things creep into your life and take over your life. That's exactly what happened to Solomon. So I'd ask you today, is there something in your life that doesn't belong there? Something that may seem innocent enough, or maybe you've justified by saying, well, that this is for the betterment of everything, like Solomon obviously did, in thinking that this would make sure that the peace continued in his kingdom by marrying these women, or that pleasing these wives was a good thing for a man to do, even though it meant going against what God said. I think that it's worth taking a look at your life right now. Just ask God, God, reveal to me anything in my life which may seem harmless right now, but might grow and grow and grow until it takes over my life, until I'm not only sinning myself, but I'm also causing others to stumble. I think it'd be a good thing to do. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.